All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to meet everyone and virtually see everyone. I have seen some familiar faces that I've come across through my different paths. I'm Anthony Barrett. I've recently joined the Office of Workforce Strategy as a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Strategic Partnership Director. And a few housekeeping for anyone who's here visiting from the public. We ask that you leave your comments in the chat. We'll be Members from our team will also be responding, and we'll also leave some time towards the end just to answer some questions. And at this time, I would like to pass it over to Jay and Sue Figueroa, and Jay Williams of the Harvard Foundation, and Sue Figueroa to take it from there. Thanks.
Thanks, Anthony. Hello, all. You guys are going to see in here Jay, and there he is. So Jay and I are honored here to be sponsoring this great committee. And so together with the Governor's Workforce Council and the Office of Workforce Strategy, we have some exciting, important, and as Jay always says, really hard things to do, but incredibly impactful. So we're going to try to yield the majority of our time to what you can see on the screen as a chock full agenda. Jay will be back toward the end of the segment to talk about the great work that's already been done across the committee. And I'll close with some next steps and closing remarks. But what you can expect during this hour together is a little bit more grounding around the Governor's Workforce Council and the Office of Workforce Strategy. If that's a question for you, it was one for me when I was first asked to join this committee. And it's just been incredible to see the commitment, the resources, and the talent that you're going to hear from in the Office of Workforce Strategy. There'll be a lot of conversation. The majority of our time will really be spent on what we've been up to. So there's just an incredible amount of work and investment going into the state to ensure that everyone in the state has an opportunity to flourish and thrive. And we have more to do for sure. So there'll be some updates that you'll hear from members of the Office of Workforce Strategy. And then we're going to give you our DE&I updates, and Jay will take you through some of those, and then we'll close. So we thank you for your time today. Jay and I are excited. You'll hear from Jay shortly. But first, let's talk about what we've been up to, and I'm going to yield the time back to that topic.
Great. So I think we wanted to do quick introductions from the OWS team now as we start off the topic of the GWC overview. So maybe Anthony, if you want to start off with a little bit more of your background, I'm sure everyone would love to hear, and we can pass the dial around. I won't introduce myself since I've met with you many times, and I think Mark can do the same. But I know this is Kelly, Laura, and Niall's first time they're joining us from OWS, so it would be great to hear from them.
Thanks, Isabel. I forgot about the intros, so my apologies. I'm so excited to get to the work that's been going on. So yes. Intros. Anthony, back to you.
All right, I'll give a little further detail into my background. So I've spent a large part of my professional background in the nonprofit space. I kind of started early on working with Justice Involved Youth. I spent 10 years overseeing juvenile justice reentry program for the Connecticut Juvenile Training School, which is, and also working with youth out of MYI, which is Manson Youth Institution, and providing reentry services and placement throughout the whole state of Connecticut, from Hartford, Bridgeport, New Haven, and so forth. So I have a background and an affinity for working with justice involved population, and also working with adults transitioning from incarceration. Another component of my background is also in nonprofit development and also youth development and workforce training programs, which I've spent probably the last 5 to 6 years doing on a grassroots level, but then also managing it as an executive director for the Wilson Gray YMCA in Hartford. So I'm very passionate about building communities, very passionate about small business development and entrepreneur support, and also making sure that there is equity and diversity and inclusiveness when it comes to workforce, job creation, and placement of individuals from marginalized populations. And here lands me now. I just joined the office. I had a chance to meet some of you all directly back in December 6th, actually. So a little bit over 2 months, or close to 2 months. I've been in office, and it's been a wonderful experience, and I look forward to working alongside everyone here to make sure we are really building an equitable workforce and making sure that different experiences are leveraged and recommended from all the working groups. And we look forward to just delivering on it. And for now, I'll pass it off to our fearless leader, Kelly. I think she's having some issues with her voice a little bit, but she's showing up, and then after that, and then now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Kelly Valeries, the Chief Workforce Officer for the State of Connecticut and Office of Workforce Strategy, and the Vice Chair for the Governor's Workforce Council. We are just really excited about the launch of this committee and all of your involvement in this really important work, and look forward to the work to come and the partnerships that will develop. And I'll throw it to Niall from there.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, I echo all of Kelly's and Anthony's sentiments here. We're really excited about this. But for those of you who I have not already had the pleasure of meeting, Niall Demondo, I'm the Chief of Staff for the Office of Workforce Strategy. And again, just really excited to ramp this up. I think we've spent a lot of time assembling the team here, and I think we've really got a lot of great stakeholders that are going to add so much to the conversation. So just reiterate all of the excitement and energy around this. So thanks again for joining, and looking forward to diving in later in the discussion. But I'll kick it over to Laura.
Thanks, Niall. Hi, everyone. Again, if I haven't quite met everyone, Laura Baker. I'm a workforce development specialist with the Office of Workforce Strategy. Really excited to continue doing all of this great work. Trained as an educator, but then spent 7 years in manufacturing, working with a wonderful, diverse population there as well, and really happy to continue the work. So I think that does, and I believe you all know Isabel already as well. So I believe that rounds out the Office of Workforce Strategy. So I'm actually going to pitch it over to Mark now, who's going to take over for the Governor's Workforce Council. Mark, Chair of the Governor's Workforce Council.
Thank you, and hello, everyone. Thank you very much for participating today. I want to quickly go over the work of the Governor's Workforce Council. We started in October 2019, spent the first year building the plan, which I think everybody has a copy of. The plan provides a blueprint for building an equitable, inclusive, and innovative workforce. There are key strategies outlined in the plan in a number of areas that we'll be talking about today, including business leadership, education, equity and access, and data. The work came out of a lot of collaborative effort from organizations throughout the state. And the plan was updated in October of this year to include in this committee, as well as we are adding a committee dealing with the WIOA, or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, because the Governor's Workforce Council has oversight in Connecticut on WIOA. And we are actually rebranding the Equity and Access Committee as the Access to Employment Committee that will focus on barriers to employment. Laura, do you want to flip to the next page? We have filled out the council pretty significantly as a result of the expansion that the legislature passed. So we have 48 of the 51 members now filled, with a few that are in process right now of getting approved. So we will have filled out the Governor's Workforce Council. Laura? Next. And this just provides an overview of the key initiatives, as well as the key committees with the Governor's Workforce Council. So you can see here, going across the top, we are adding a committee to help develop the WIOA strategic plan, which every state has to develop every 4 years, as well as oversee the implementation of it. We have a data and performance committee that is focused on a range of initiatives, ranging from being able to measure the performance of workforce programs to setting up and developing new tools for job seekers, students, and others to really be able to plan out their careers and gain access to all the information they need about education and career and employment options. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which is this group, focusing in on developing specific programs and policies related to different populations that are underrepresented, as well as really providing guidance and direction for all of the major initiatives of the Governor's Workforce Council. Then we come to the Access to Employment Committee that's been focused on specific barriers like childcare and transportation and benefit cliffs. That committee has already made good progress on some of those, but there's still a lot of work left to do. At the bottom of the page, we see business leadership, which is the committee that is focused on developing regional sector partnerships, as well as skills-based hiring, quality jobs, and retaining college graduates. The middle one being sector training, which is the biggest part of that is the Career Connect program, which you'll be hearing about today. And then on the far right, you see the Education and Career Pathways Committee that is focused on building out education and career pathways in high school, or through the K-12 system all the way through higher education, including apprenticeships. So that kind of gives you an overview on the kind of strategic plan in terms of the Governor's Workforce Council. Next, I believe Niall is going to go into more detail about the Office of Workforce Strategy. Yes, all of these slides will be available, and we're obviously happy to answer any kind of questions either in the chat line or at the end on this. Niall?
Thanks, Mark. Yes, and I think a lot of what I'm going to get into will sort of further substantiate and elaborate on some of Mark's comments on the council structure. So hopefully this helps give a good overview for everyone. So on the slide here, we at OWS, we're working on a broader mission and vision statement, but I think at a high level, we're really focused on coordinating workforce development programs across the state. And coming out of the legislative session last year, we were formally codified in statute. And some of the bullets that you see here are statute authority, but others are just sort of our priorities more broadly. So one of our first and foremost functions as an office is to provide staff to the Governor's Workforce Council. So we will help engage all of you and help plug you into other initiatives that are happening across the council. Obviously, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not its own committee in a lot of ways. It really needs to be embedded throughout the whole council. So our role is really to help connect individuals, better engage them throughout the work of the council, but also help with the day-to-day operations of the council, running meetings, helping with the quarterly meetings, et cetera. So another function is that Kelly, in her role as the Chief Workforce Officer, is the primary advisor to the governor on workforce development policy, in collaboration and coordination with other state agencies, as well as the legislature, of course. So working with other partners quite regularly to make sure that we're embedding the workforce strategy that we've developed across additional stakeholders. The third bullet, which I think is really the focal point of this committee, is really to promote equity and access of the workforce system. A lot of the individuals that we have served up to this point through initial investments from the coronavirus relief funds were a majority minority populations. So we really are focused on providing support to those who need it the most through the funding that we have. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation when we start going over Career Connect. And then I think one of the, we'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation as well, but one of the functions of our office is a bit unique in that we are meant to be a cross-cutting agency. So one of our main functions is really to work with our sister agencies to support them in the work that they're doing on workforce development, that given workforce is already being done in a lot of ways across agencies. And our role is really to help coordinate it so that it's aligned with the strategies of the strategic plan, but also that they have support from us, whether it's funding or thought partnership as they're kicking off some of their initiatives. So we really are meant to interoperate across state government and outside of state government. And then finally, one of our largest roles is to ensure that best practices are being promoted in the programs that we are funding or supporting through other means. So through the work that we've done, whether it's in partnership with a regional workforce board or a nonprofit organization, community-based organization, our goal is to really have a standard set of best practices for a job training program that really are people centered at the end of the day and can really allow focus on recruiting from the most adversely impacted populations, ensure that ample supportive services are provided to all of the job training participants, ensuring that the actual technical curriculum is aligned to industry demands. So there's a lot of there's almost like a checklist of things that we really want to make sure are being, the new normal in Connecticut for a workforce program. And I think that's part of our work is disseminating that knowledge and programs across the state. So we'll share a little bit more later on some additional responsibilities, but this is kind of high level, the main charge of our office and what are the different areas that we're focused on. So what have we been up to? This is an operative question, I think, for this group. There's a lot going on, and I am happy to kind of just dive right in. There's both stuff that we've been working on independently within our office. And when I say independently, I mean somewhat separate from the quarterly GWC meetings, but very much in partnership with a lot of organizations. And then as you see on the slide here, there's actual initiatives that are in the strategic plan that we are making really great progress on. So you'll see that each of these are segmented by the committees that Mark was talking about. So what I'm going to do is just kind of provide a brief overview across each of the committees and some of the work that's been happening there. And please, if you have any questions on some of this, don't hesitate to ping something in the chat and we can address it at the end of the meeting. But for our first committee, we are really, business leadership, we are really focused on rolling out our regional sector partnerships. So these are consortia of employers for specific industries in specific regions that really set the workforce agenda for that particular industry. So our goal is to form these kind of organic partnerships across the state that are employer driven. They could have anywhere from 20 to 40 employers on them, but really use them as the central voice to, align on hiring practices, to inform the development of curriculum, to say, these are the roles that we're currently hiring for in our organizations to help educators develop new and innovative curriculum. So we're really, I think, viewing these partnerships as a direct and critical backbone of the system that we're trying to build in Connecticut. While they are employer-led, they're not solely employer partnerships. These do include nonprofits, they include educators, they include sometimes government agencies, chambers of commerce. But again, if you think about a table, businesses they're at the center of the table, and then these other organizations are at the periphery of the table, kind of hearing what the needs are, and then using that to inform the work that they're doing. So this is a huge initiative for us as a council, and I think a really good intersection and integration point for the work that you all are doing, because I think the knowledge that this group brings would be invaluable to have in those regional sector partnerships. So when we think about how to get you all plugged into the work that is happening elsewhere, I think this is a key initiative that really could benefit from the expertise on the line here. So that's one area. A second area, I won't get into a lot of detail here because I know we have a lot to cover, is around skills-based hiring, where we've hired a group to help convene a small team of employers specific to the IT industry initially, but it will be expanded to other industries eventually. But that's really focused on developing more equitable hiring practices. So, in IT, traditionally, people need a degree to enter into even an entry-level job. What we're focused on is how can we make hiring more focused on skills and less focused on degrees. This is not only a huge push for equity, but it also serves to benefit the companies by expanding the talent pool and getting them access to talent that they otherwise might not have had. Advanced CT is working on what's called the Campus CT initiative. This is another flagship program in the Business Leadership Committee. This is really around ensuring college graduates stay in the state. So what Campus CT is doing is convening a group of, they're first focused in Hartford, and then they're expanding to other regions, but they're intently focused on recruiting different educators and different employers to work directly with students to market internships, say why, in this case, Hartford is a great place to work. It's a great place to live. So really just kind of market Connecticut and market jobs to these students. So a lot's happening on there, and we're really excited about some of that progress. So sector training, as I mentioned before, we deployed $15 million basically over the last 12 months in coronavirus relief funds that went to train over 1,300 individuals. These were run in partnership with our workforce development boards and some smaller nonprofits. And I think, were very helpful in terms of identifying best practices that ultimately went to inform the launch of Career Connect, to ensure that what we learned from this money is being integrated into the larger $70 million investment that was just kicked off. So this was a big initiative, for our office. And, we're really looking forward to announcing more of the results of the training programs as they come in. The programs literally just ended in December, so data is still trickling in. I'm not going to belabor the point on Career Connect. We're going to talk much more about that later on in the presentation, so I'm going to skip over that bullet for now. On education and career pathways, we're working closely with our State Department of Ed on developing more alternative pathways in high school, whether it's increased access to dual credit programs or developing additional programs in high schools that issue an industry recognized credential for high school students to immediately enter work once they've earned their diploma. So we're really trying to take a K-12 focus or K-12 through retirement focus in the work that we're doing. And we're really excited about launching this partnership with State Department of Ed. So the last two committees, one is access to employment. We've been focused on a lot of issues here, focused on how can we knock down barriers that are preventing people from meaningfully participating in the workforce system. So we've been really focused on childcare here. So developing a business coalition of employers to align on sort of best practices for expanding childcare access to their employees. We're also looking at how can we make childcare more affordable. So conducting a cost of care study and aligning on more equitable compensation schedules for providers. We're also really focused on transportation. So with some of our state bonded funding that we were authorized from the legislative session, we're working on developing a fund that would provide additional transportation access and services to individuals who are not only in job training programs, but are also in work, who still are not making high enough wages to afford transportation to and from work every day. So again, really focused on how do we expand that access. We're also in the process of rolling out what's called a benefits cliff counseling tool. This was developed in partnership with the Atlanta Federal Reserve. And what this really does is provide a very clear snapshot of, if I am a worker who is making minimum wage and I take a job that would pay $22 an hour, as a pharmacy technician at Yale New Haven Hospital, what benefits would I lose that I'm currently on? So it's a really helpful way of mapping out a career pathway for someone and helps them really make an educated decision based on the current benefits that they're receiving, because we know sometimes if someone takes on a new role, their benefits immediately drop off, and that's a huge disruptive kind of thing that someone has to deal with in their life. So this is a way to get out in front of that to make sure that people are prepared when making those decisions. And then finally, on data and accountability, we are very focused on developing what we're calling a workforce one-stop system across state government. This is really focused on developing sort of an umbrella technology that brings all of the existing workforce tools and technology across the state under one website. So the goal here is, we know there's a lot of services that are being delivered to individuals, whether it's through our Department of Labor, Department of Social Services, even our community college and state university system. And we're trying to bring that all under one umbrella. So not duplicating services by any means, but creating a forum where all of that is under one roof, so that if I'm a student, if I'm a job seeker, if I'm a teacher, if I'm an employer, everyone can access this in one kind of cohesive way, to really get the transactions that they need, whether it's finding a job training program, researching, colleges to enroll in Connecticut, really the full gamut of online services for workforce. So we're really excited about this. And I have been working very closely with the new technology team that's been onboarded, and they will definitely be reaching out to everyone on this committee to offer feedback on how to make this an inclusive system. And so that people with, technical deficiencies, lack of internet connection, people who have, really don't have those kind of things, have access to this system and can really use it. And then just the last one, I'm not going to touch on some of them, some of the other points, but just the last one I would emphasize is we are working in partnership with our Department of Labor to enhance the CT Hires system, which is, a front door to a lot of workforce training programs right now in Connecticut, specifically around WIOA for the most part. But what we're focused on is, how do we make this a more user-friendly system? How do we make sure it's, adopted and utilized with fidelity? So really, partnering with our Department of Labor to ensure that, this system is getting utilized and it's, actually being taken advantage of by residents and job seekers in Connecticut. So I'm going to breeze through this just for the interest of time here, because I know there's a lot more to cover. But this section right now is focused on providing an overview of the legislative outcomes from last session. So Laura, if you can hop to the next slide, I'll just.
Niall, but before we jump into this, and I'm in charge of slides, just so everyone knows too, do you want to quickly pause for a few questions? I know we're jumping through a lot, and I see a few in the chat that are very relevant to what you were just discussing. So Suzanne Thomas just asked, wondering why we have to accept a benefits cliff, forcing people to choose benefits versus career progression. Are there efforts to build a benefits bridge?
That's a great, thank you, Isabel, by the way. Yes, Susan, that's a great question. I think this tool is really to actually help inform the building of that bridge. And this tool really is meant to give people the heads up so that they can effectively plan, so that there isn't that drop off, there isn't that cliff. And the goal here is to get this tool integrated in job centers, with case managers across the state, community action agencies, the organizations who represent the boots on the ground, for them to utilize this tool to really help build, as you're putting it, the bridge and not the cliff. So I think we can happily share the link to this tool. It is live and up and running. There are some supports that need to get provided in concurrence with the deployment of the tool. But the goal here really is so that someone can make an educated decision on what is the right career for them and what's the right progression for them to get to that career, so that it's not stops and starts, and it's not walking over a cliff and getting your income reduced or benefits reduced drastically within a 2 or 3 month period. So we really view this tool as a critical building block of that bridge, so that people have continuity of benefits and of wages.
Thanks, Al. Maybe I'll pull 1 or 2 more questions from the chat, kind of being conscious of time, but also want to address everyone's very important questions. Marianne Haley asked what the current state of collaboration is with behavioral health services, given the mental health crisis, particularly among young people in Connecticut.
Yes. So we are working across our agencies right now to actually submit a few proposals to the administration on expanding access, not only faculty, but also tuition for individuals to enroll in those types of programs, because we know right now there's a huge shortage of mental health professionals, given the exacerbated need that the pandemic has had. So one of the areas that we've been focused on is how can we recruit more faculty? How can we engage more students to enroll in these types of fields? How can we build more flexible pathway programs, so that someone maybe doesn't need to go through 4 years of college, to enter this career? So there's a lot kind of happening here right now, and we're sort of waiting to hear back on the status of some of those proposals. But we very much acknowledge the toll that the pandemic has had on individuals from a mental health standpoint, and unfortunately, that's put an undue burden on the workforce, the mental health workforce, and so we need to really help support them. Get more people into the field, get more faculty so training can be ramped up. And that's really what we're focused on right now, really trying to ramp up the supply of those very, very much needed professionals.
A lot of great conversation. Thank you for that answer, Niall, and a lot of great conversation going on in the chat. A lot of these questions are very detailed and specific. So I want to say that OWS will definitely be saving the chat and can respond to questions thereafter that we don't address now. And that I'm only going to pick 1 more before we move on. That's kind of general versus some of these more specific ones, also because we're definitely laying it on Niall right now. So I guess the last question that I will pick is a few in here have popped up around housing issues for youth, for reentry, and if there's any kind of collaboration in the Office of Workforce Strategy happening there, or if that is something that we will be tacking onto our agenda.
Yeah, so 2 things on that I would mention. I think a broader partnership with DOH, Department of Housing, is definitely one that needs to be built, I would say, with our office. I think traditionally we have been, regarding sort of supportive services for individuals in a job training program or in work, we have been largely focused on ensuring that all of those people have access to childcare, access to transportation, access to behavioral or mental health services. But housing is certainly part of that list. And we, our goal is really to work closely with DOH to ensure that individuals have access to that. Whether they're in a training program or whether they're currently employed. So we are, that is very much on our list, and would love to kind of elaborate more on that within some of the working group conversations here. The second piece is, I would just mention a little bit of a sneak peek into the latter half of the presentation on Career Connect. We are very much looking to support individuals who need housing with those funds. We are taking a comprehensive approach in terms of what services we're providing folks, again, so that they are able to sustain their involvement and engagement in a job training program. Like I mentioned, housing is absolutely a part of that list of services that need to be included. So as we are working with providers and training partners to roll out those programs, just please know that if housing is necessary for some of the participants that are being recruited for these programs, that is absolutely something that our office is wanting to support and really make sure that there's availability. So not only are we trying to address it in the short term by providing funding for that, but also in the long term, I think by developing more tight partnerships with our DOH colleagues.
Awesome. Thanks, Niall. I'm already getting pings from people directly in the chat with wanting to help with these goals and collaborating. So it's great to see, and this is why we bring you all here. So with that, I'll move forward in the slides and stop haggling Niall.
So just quickly here, I know we only have a couple, our time is precious, and I want to make sure there is, to Isabel's points, opportunity to for the group to really weigh in towards the end of the discussion. So I'm gonna try to breeze through some of this. Isabel and Laura, keep me honest, but I think we are sharing these slides out with the group after, so you'll have every opportunity to review these and follow up with our team with more questions. But really quickly, the implementer bill that passed last session had a couple of key provisions in it around workforce. One was it codified the Governor's Workforce Council and the Office of Workforce Strategy. It also expanded the Governor's Workforce Council to 51 members. It established a Governor's Workforce Cabinet, which is a group of commissioners and state agency officials focused on developing or promoting workforce development programs within state government. It also located our office within Governor Lamont's office for administrative purposes only. It created the role of the Chief Workforce Officer, which is now held by Kelly. And I'm not going to get into the details of the role, but this blue box on the bottom outlines kind of the big salient points in terms of what Kelly's role is as Chief Workforce Officer and how that relates to the broader goals and directives of our office. But just for the sake of time, I'm gonna keep moving through the slides. So really high level here, really quickly. This slide is meant to serve as a recap of some of the big workforce legislation that came out of the 2021 session. So there's sort of three buckets here. One is focused on increasing post-secondary access for individuals. And to be clear, that is not just college, that is short-term certificate training, it's associate degrees, it's also four-year degrees, but we've tried taking a comprehensive look at what opportunities are going to be available for students once they graduate high school. So some of the provisions that you see here are around increasing adoption of and completion of the FAFSA. This is a really powerful way of getting students into a post-secondary plan. It's also a way to leverage federal money to get to provide supports to students. Developing an auto admissions program with our Connecticut four-year universities. So Eastern are directional 4 years, so Eastern, Southern, Central, and Western. This is really centered around equity. And the goal here is to establish a threshold for admitting a student who is, above that threshold, whether it's GPA, whether it's class attendance, test scores, community service, that all still needs to be worked through. But the goal here is to ensure that students from alliance districts are getting, automatically admitted into schools so that they otherwise wouldn't have applied to, because either they didn't have the resources to apply or they didn't think that they could get in. So this is really focused on expanding access to education, and again is really intentional on communities that have historically been underrepresented in college attendance. The second bucket here is workforce training. So you'll see the first bullet is around the investments that have been given to the Office of Workforce Strategy. We'll get more into those later, so I'm not gonna dive into that right now. But we're working with our Department of Correction on informing a vocational village program, which is all around expanding access to industry aligned, high quality workforce training in the correctional facilities. So we're really excited about that partnership with DOC, and we think we could do a lot with that program. Another huge area or huge bill that passed was around the legalization of adult use cannabis. We are partnering very closely with the Social Equity Council to ensure that workforce training opportunities exist for individuals who want to enter the cannabis industry. We're also partnering directly with the council to develop criteria for a workforce development plan that a social equity applicant would need to submit when applying for a cannabis license. So what I could say, I think within this forum is that the plan that we have developed is very much centered on equity. How is your workforce? Who does your workforce consist of? Where did you recruit those individuals from? Have they been impacted by the war on drugs in the past? So it's all really focused on I think addressing and remedying some of the historically marginalized populations and making sure that they are front and center in these new opportunities. For time's sake, I'm going to skip over the right-hand side and let's hop to the next slide for now, but I'm happy to answer any more questions on some of the legislative components coming out of last session. But for now, I think I am going to turn it over to Laura to talk about some of our exciting Career Connect announcements.
Thanks, Niall. I'm trying to remove you as the spotlight so you don't have to stay up there any longer. Appreciate it. Definitely want to echo what Isabel and Niall were saying, regarding the chat. It's really, really awesome to see so many great questions. We're really looking at taking the approach and tackling everything that we possibly can while not being duplicative to services that are already being provided. So you've put a lot of great information in here, and we definitely look forward to peeling through that all in the coming days. So Career Connect is OWS's flagship initiative that we are launching to help tackle a lot around workforce training and development and systems building around workforce training and development. So we look at this as phased approaches. So right now, top of mind is the American Rescue Plan dollars, where we have been allocated $70 million from the Connecticut legislature to spend on workforce training. Some of that will be reserved to help the OWS manage and support the programs, but then the majority of that's going to go right back out into the Connecticut community in workforce training. So right now, a grant application is open and available to Connecticut individuals to apply for training that they want to offer training, and we're looking at the first round ending at the third week in January. So right now we're looking at about $62 or so million that we're looking to give out. A lot of this is going to be focused right now on just short-term training programs where we can get a lot of our unemployed individuals upskilled or reskilled and back employed. A major focus of these dollars from our perspective and from the American Rescue Plan federal perspective is to focus this onto underrepresented and marginalized communities. The data shows that they've been absolutely the most impacted during COVID. And so we need to ensure that these dollars are trickling down to all the corners and crevices of the state, and that we are recruiting boots on the ground folks to get back into jobs that are on career pathways and have a pipeline in front of them. That's really top of mind for right now. After that, we're going to hopefully move into bond funding. Again, we've been allocated $40 million in bond dollars from the state of Connecticut, but we only have $5 million right now. And that's to provide complementary programming and support to these ARPA dollars. So ARPA dollars, federal dollars, tend to have restrictions and allowable uses. The bond dollars will help to supplement and be complementary to those dollars. And you can see here, and again, we're going to share this out, but in the sake of time, I'm not going to go through every bullet point, but we will call out one, maybe specifically a Snappy and T programming. We can't we get a federal 50 cents on the dollar back if we use state dollars when we do SNAP E&T programming, where we don't have that option if we use it for federal dollars. So again, looking at the best ways that we can really enhance our return on investment and do the best that we can there. Last will be phase 3, and then I'm sure there will be a phase 4 and a phase 5. It will be the additional sources of funding, and that's to, again, continue to provide complementary funding to the workforce system. Right now, we're focused on a lot of the short-term programming, but that's not everything. That's just a piece of the puzzle. So these additional funding dollars will help support a lot of the other programs that I think you guys brought up in the chat, actually. So you can read them here, but we're looking at all the different ways we can have at least 100 million and more for additional improvements. And these are also maybe some system-wide improvements as well. Right now, bullet point number 2 down there is going after the Good Jobs Challenge grant. So right now we're looking at going towards $35 million for job training and really leveraging our regional sector partnerships to support job training in the regions of Connecticut. Go ahead, Isabel. I think there's one more slide here for me. So right now we do know that there are some industries of high need that really need jobs, manufacturing, IT, and healthcare. Infrastructure, clean energy, I think I saw some comments in the chat asking about that. So yes, we are looking at the different ways that we can support infrastructure and clean energy, and green jobs all kind of fall into that category. This is just a loose framework though. So we've used some labor stats and some job training stats to see where the high needs are. And this is really kind of where we're looking at bucketing the dollars, but it's not, it's a loose interpretation. So, this is what we're expecting that the money will likely be spent on. And again, the intent at the very bottom, although maybe we should put it at the top, is to focus on those communities that most have been impacted during COVID, and our BIPOC and our people with disabilities, our reentry, our youth, our veterans, and again, leveraging the folks on the community, the trusted messengers around the state who can help get and help recruit down to everybody that need it, and bring those folks along for Career Connect. So our hope is that we will have one kind of single point of entry where individuals interested in a job can go to, interested in training can go to, and get some case management, get some supportive services. And so when we're looking at this Career Connect, we're really, I know Niall mentioned around best practice, and we are seeing best practice includes great case management, childcare supportive services, transportation supportive services, safety shoes and fire-resistant clothing, laptops, hotspots, those things that really help bring people into training and help them feel a lot more successful and help them be a lot more successful. I think that's the we'll on to the next slide, Isabel. Is there one more for me?
Nope.
All right, so we will go back to Niall.
I'm on Good Jobs Challenge, so I can
Isabel,
take the reins. But maybe before we dive in there, is there a question or two on Career Connect specifically? Obviously, there's a deadline looming here, and it's an important flagship initiative of OWS's. If anyone wants to raise their hand, and if not, I can dive into Good Jobs Challenge. I hear someone having come off mute.
Hi, Isabel. I think I have one that I think Keith actually posed a really good one. Is the state of Connecticut changing the stance on hiring returning citizens to the state of Connecticut jobs moving forward with all the workforce development initiatives and training, yet the very state that provides these services won't hire people that have a criminal background and needs to be looked into more closely?
Yeah, Isabel, I could jump in here. I would say right now we are oh, sorry, I thought I muted myself. We are working with the state on their broader hiring practices. I will say that that has not gotten as deep as specific populations. So this is definitely something that's sort of in the hopper. But I can say one thing that we are very much working on is ensuring that the state is applying equitable hiring practices, not only for IT roles that they're hiring for, but other roles in the variety of departments that are currently out there. So just know, I think this is something that we haven't quite fleshed out yet, but we are starting to have broader conversations on, as I mentioned, around skills-based hiring. Previously working with the private sector, we very much are working with our public sector colleagues to ensure that those are not just private sector policies, but also public sector practices as well. So just know we are working on it, but having more, I think, broader conversations first on what structures we need to put in place from the state hiring side, because it unfortunately is a bit more, it's always a little more challenging with any hiring decisions on the state, just because of government protocols and procedures. But just know that this is definitely on our list on the reentry community.
Great, thank you, Niall. Before I pivot to the people who have their hands raised, I want to quickly answer one Career Connect related question in the chat regarding the intent to allocate funding to DEI communities. How will we document how this funding is spent and outcomes for these populations? So for every single applicant that is awarded Career Connect funding, there will be a long tail of data tracking processes through both the recruitment portal that was mentioned, as well as the data collection through CT hiring that will allow us to make sure we're keeping track on a demographic by demographic basis, and not only on race and ethnicity, but also on understanding who might have that reentry background or persons with disabilities background, et cetera, and tracking their outcomes, be it completion of the training programs, placement into jobs, wage growth. So it's something that OWS is extremely focused on and is a mandatory part of any funding that we will be giving to programs. So I'll quickly pivot to those who have their hands raised. Apologies if I mispronounced your name, Lupu.
Yes, hi. You pronounced it correctly. I just had a question. If I put in a chat, I want to ask out here to see how is there a plan for once training is done, when these people get their credentials, how are we ensuring that these employers, I'm talking about the reentry population, that's a population that's having a lot more obstacles like housing, employment. How are we ensuring that these employers are going to hire them once they get these job training, these credentials, and everything else they need to do? Because it's not happening. As in regarding to manufacturing, I'm talking about too. It's not happening. We tell them, we recruit and saying it's a forgiving field. The state has invested money and create a lot of partnerships, get trained for manufacturing. Once they're done, they're not getting hired. So how are we going to change that?
That's a great question, Lupu, and I think we there's a couple, I think, ways that we're attempting to tackle this. This is a very complicated issue that has a lot of facets to it. So I think we're trying to tackle it where we can, given everything else we have going on. But I think a couple responses. One is there is a period right now where we are encouraging providers to partner directly with employers on establishing and developing their applications. So part of that process, for example, we've seen a few applications already come out that say they're going to be focused on the reentry population. So one of our recommendations would be for those employers in that case who are working with those the applicants in this case to have direct conversations about what needs to be in place to ensure that the individuals from the reentry community who are going through the training program are not having their time wasted, quite frankly, if they're going to finish the training program and ultimately not get an offer. So One of the areas is making sure that the applicants are having upfront conversations with the employers to ensure that there are commitments being made here for the folks who are finishing the program. The other area that I would mention is around the feedback loop of these proposals. I think everything that you're mentioning is consistent with what we've been hearing across the broader correctional reentry pipeline right now from our DOC colleagues, from individuals in the community. So, for example, from our office's perspective for Career Connect, if we see a proposal that does not clearly stipulate how these individuals are going to get hired by the employers, that would be an instance where, as Laura mentioned with this review period, we would make sure that those applicants have sort of a second shot at addressing some of our feedback. Because, for instance, that would be an area where we would pressure test and say, you know, well, we don't see a clear pipeline here. Can you describe and provide more details on how those individuals will ultimately get an offer of employment? So we're trying, in the absence of broader industry change, which 100% agree that needs to happen. And we've actually started having a few conversations with CBIA on this. In the short term, we are trying to integrate some practices within Career Connect to ensure that individuals have those, re-entering individuals specifically have those offers that are not impeded because of, you know, implicit bias or other factors that really need to be taken account. So we're trying to make some short-term quick wins on that front with Career Connect through our general policies, and also longer-term, more structural change with the business community more broadly.
All right, thank you, Niles. Beatrice, we're gonna, you can provide your question, and then after that, we're gonna transition just for the sake of time.
Yeah, not to, you know, repeat the point, because that's not my intent, but I think this is so critical because this reentry population is kind of at the intersect, in some cases, of BIPOC. We have so many young, particularly males, Latinos, and African Americans that unfortunately start their life, you know, as adults in prison. And trying to get back to work, manufacturing provides such a great place for them to build a life. And there are jobs there, but I do think that we have to think broadly, how do we lower the risk for the employer? And the reason I say that is employment in manufacturing takes a long time to get to the level that someone is productive. So when you're starting with that cost, that is always significant, particularly for small manufacturers in the supply chain. And now you have on top of that the implied bias. It makes it even more challenging. So, you know, I think we really should be very aggressive at thinking, how do we make it, you know, easy for the employer to bring the person in for some time, basically a subsidy, so they can try them out. And I think once they do, they will be more comfortable, particularly because in Connecticut, there is a lot of myths around being a defense state and not being able to hire someone with a record, which is not necessarily true in all jobs. But people have that mentality, oh, I cannot do federal contracts if I have that. So I think there's an education factor that we need to work with the manufacturers. But I think there's also it should be a true intent to lower the risk for the small company to take someone on into their fold. So that was just my point there.
Yeah, Beatrice, I mean, totally aligned with that. And I think one just point I would make on something that we're trying to work on with our DOC colleagues is that we're also trying to expand the opportunities here as well. Like, not just, I think one thing that I had heard is that manufacturing was an area that is ripe for opportunity for these individuals, no question about it. And I think there's also now opportunities for alternative careers where, you know, maybe someone can earn a career in IT, for example. Our office just kicked off a rollout of Amazon and Google certificates across the community college system. So I think I totally agree with your point, and we definitely need to make sure that there's opportunities for, you know, on the job training for these individuals, where it's not just pre-training or pre-hire training, but, you know, this kind of trial period for these individuals. And there's also, I think, opportunity for these folks to really start permeating other industries that are reeling right now because of the pandemic. So there's help that's needed across the board. And, you know, part of this vocational village program that we're working with our DOC colleagues is really trying to expand the aperture on what industries are really a focus area for these individuals. So points very, very well taken.
Thanks.
Great. So I think I will jump back into the slides. So the next topic we're going to talk about is the Good Jobs Challenge. It is one of the other major projects that the Office of Workforce Strategy is focused on right now. And what the Good Jobs Challenge is an Economic Development Association national funding opportunity that we are submitting a statewide application to. The goal of the Good Jobs Challenge is to get Americans back to work by building and strengthening systems and partnerships that bring together employers who have hiring needs with other key entities who train workers with in-demand skills that lead to good paying jobs. So similar to what Niall and Laura have both mentioned several times throughout our presentation, it's very much linked to the key pillar in the governor's workforce strategy plan of building out these regional sector partnerships that have employers at the center of the table, defining the career pathways and needs, and everyone else in the career pathway system around the table, making sure that those pathways are created. And so the Office of Workforce Strategy is submitting a statewide application where we are a system lead entity and lead applicant supporting the system of regional sector partnerships throughout the state. So there's 7 existing regional sector partnerships and there are 3 in process. I'll go to the next page because it kind of gives a little bit of a graphic depiction to what I'm discussing. So on the left, you can see a picture of the state's RSP system. We've got 7 existing. As I said, there's 4 in manufacturing, 1 in Northwest, 1 in the capital area, 1 in Eastern, and 1 in, 1 in Northwest, 1 in Eastern, 1 in South Central, and 1 in Southwest for manufacturing. Then we have 2 in tech, 1 in the capital area and 1 in the Stanford area. And then we have 1 in bioscience in the New Haven area. Then we have 3 that we are currently building out in healthcare, given how important the industry is in terms of staff shortages and needs right now. And we're building those in the Northwest, capital, and Eastern area. So the application as a whole will really be supporting the individualized needs of each of these regional sector partnerships to build them out as a system and then use those systems as a vehicle to deliver job training focused on these regions and industries. And on the right, you can see a depiction of what we've articulated a few times when we talk about the regional sector partnership, where really the center of the table is these businesses, and on the outside is the various other important organizations to career pathways, these community partners. And so part of the reason that we wanted to bring our application to your attention is because the EDA has repeatedly mentioned that there are 2 main investment criteria they want applicants to focus on. One of them is equity, and the second is actually getting people into jobs and having that link to employers. So on the first point, how we plan to address equity, besides having specific narratives at each of the regional sector partnerships, is to tap the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Group, all of you, to, if we are lucky enough, and hopefully we are, to secure this funding, to tap you as a bit of an oversight board in helping each of these regional sector partnerships set equity goals when it comes to each of your populations as a whole, making sure that we are setting thresholds and keeping in mind exactly where we want to be in terms of serving those populations, as well as making the direct connections into those populations. Obviously, everyone here is either working at workforce nonprofits in state agencies that are related, and we are even lucky enough to now have community members from these populations joining us that really are boots on the ground and can help make these links to make sure that we're recruiting underserved populations into our programs that will be implemented through our Good Jobs Challenge application. The application is due February 10th, and we find out whether or not we get the award in July. So I will move on and pass it to Jay and Sue to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished.
Thank you, Isabel. And thank you to all of the staff for your tireless work and efforts in moving this forward. And as Sue alluded to in her opening comments, this is difficult work. It can be messy. Anytime you are very intentional about being inclusive, appreciating the value and the importance of diversity, it is something that takes time. That being said, there's also an urgency that this has been a longstanding problem in our country, a longstanding problem in our state, and to the credit of this administration, there is a clarion call that we have to and have an obligation to do something about it, not as a check the box exercise, but as something that we're committed to making sure that it is a part of the entirety of the fabric of this very important initiative. So to that end, just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what has been accomplished since this advisory group has been launched back at the end of October. And again, notwithstanding the pandemic that we continue to wrestle with and all the other things that are underway, for those of you who feel that not much has been done, we want to disabuse that perception. But for those of you who say, yeah, that's great, but there's more to be done, we also agree. So you also, you heard from the very beginning, one of the more exciting manifestations was the hiring of Anthony Barrett to join as the DEI Strategic Partnership Director. And this is a role that is really focused entirely and permanently on working with the advisors to ensure equity remains, as it says, a key pillar, to make sure that this isn't just a check the box exercise or something that is an afterthought, but that it is baked into every part of the initiatives as we have been discussing and as all of you have been contributing to. We've also seen progress along the engagement of community members, working with a consortium of organizations and nonprofit that have pledged or provided resources so that the community members can be paid for their time. Again, this is not something that, we'd love for you to bring your lived experience and your perspective to this just because it's the thing that is so needed, but not also recognizing the value of their time and their experiences. So a number of those partners are in attendance, community members are in attendance today. We want to make sure that we respect and demonstrate the value of their time as we would all expect for the time that we spend on important initiatives like this. The announcement of the Career Connect is something that was exceptionally exciting. Holding the nonprofit community organization socialization call with more than 100 participants to socialize the Career Connect opportunity, which is, and it's a very important tool to ensure the connection between employers, the in-demand jobs that they have, and those residents of the state with skills or who will be able to obtain skills through all the programs that we're talking about. So, tapping into or taking advantage of the Rescue Act funding, which is probably, a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to be able to leverage that to reach those historically marginalized communities. And again, this is a long-standing challenge in our country and in our state, and perhaps the one time in our lifetime where we have this level of public federal funding to be able to leverage and maximize that would make meaningful, lasting changes in our ability to reach those historically marginalized communities. Again, planning under that Career Connect to leverage a subset of DEI advisors who aren't going to be applying through the Career Connect, but to instead act as application reviewers, because it's important that we have the perspective and the unique lived experiences of individuals themselves in assessing each application, not taking for granted the implicit biases that we all have and that we all carry with us. And one of the ways to battle and combat that is making sure that we've got a diverse group of folks with relevant lived experience looking at and assessing each application. And finally, collaboration, which is just essential and underscores everything that we're doing. The subgroups who have met on a regular basis, bringing, again, individuals with the appropriate relevant experiences in serving and being part of those underserved populations to collaborate when they may not have opportunity to do otherwise. And I'll end by saying that we've seen significant progress with some of these groups, particularly the reentry and the youth groups who have recruited all of their community members, others who are well on their way, and collaborating on this in ways that challenge us, in ways that sometimes might make us think about uncomfortable things, means that we are well on our way to having an outcome and a result that is demonstrably better in every way. So thank you all for that. I will now turn it over to Sue.
Thank you, Jay, for a wonderful recap of our accomplishments. So just to piggyback off of what Jay mentioned in regards to the support for the community members. So we had United Way of Western Connecticut step up to the plate to serve as our fiduciary in getting those dollars out to support the work of the community members. We have 5 agencies that stepped up to the plate. B Foundation is one of them, Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Fairfield County Community Foundation, and Valley Community Foundation. So one of the things our office is working through is just putting together the exact framework on how we're going to get these dollars out and make sure that it's at a allowable cap. We're looking to probably cap it under $600 just to make sure that it's not reportable income and create any additional barriers. Another way that we're also going to look to do is put together the exact time allocation and frequency of meeting, and also just putting in some cadence to how meetings can be recorded and for members to actually watch the video or just to watch the recording and just mention it directly so they can be compensated. So we're still going to draft out a few line items around how to make sure that's best practice and push that out. So we're very fortunate and grateful for those foundations to step up to the plate and be able to provide those resources. And that's something that I believe we heard from just the listening sessions from just being part of the other community meetings. So thank you for that. And I'll pass it back over to Jay and Sue.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Jay. Just a couple comments on next steps, and then I'll kick it back over to Isabel and Anthony for how we might want to use the balance of our time. Certainly a lot of information here. I know there was a question earlier in the chat around will the slides be shared, and the answer was yes. And then there was a lot of really good emblematic dialogue about will it be bilingual, will it be in translatable language for all. So these are the types of challenges, push, and questions that we're asking you all to bring forward. It's going to make us better. Before I jump in here to the next steps, I just wanted to follow up on Jay, your point at the very opening of the overview that you just provided, which was, if you're pleased with the work that we're doing, we thank you for the recognition. There are a lot of folks working really, really hard on a problem that's really challenging. And if you're feeling like it's not enough, we agree. So I just wanted to reiterate that because I thought that was just so well said. I'm sure you said it better than I repeated, Jay, but it's worth repeating, right? We are pleased and grateful for the amount of work and tireless effort individuals are expending to move this problem, to make this problem better for our state, but we are equally dissatisfied that we haven't done enough. With that said, there's a lot of next steps underway. So we have subgroups that are working together that, Jay talked about all the work that they've already done already. And those charters will be coming together here toward the end of February. The charters are important because they will align us into what it is that we will be doing, making sure we're driving through short-term tactical wins that demonstrate not only to us, but to our communities that we are in fact moving forward, but recognizing that this is not a short-term set of problems and that there is more work to be done, many of which will take midterm and long-term time horizons. So really great work from the subcommittees. The Office of Workforce Strategy, we just got a small snippet of the incredible work Kelly and the full team is working on, but we're going to make sure that we're improving the link, not only between this group and what we're talking about here, but ensuring that diversity, equity, inclusion, and ensuring that the voice of every member of our community is at the forefront of all of the Governor's Workforce Council committees. So Jay and I will be joining some of their future meetings to ensure that we are reminding them of the provocative questions they need to be asking and inviting them and bringing them into our overall approach to ensure that at every decision and every investment we're making for the benefit of the state. We are thinking about the aspects, the elements, and perhaps where we might be missing when we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And obviously, we're not alone in that. The Office of Workforce Strategy will be partnering with us in that regard, and also focusing on training for all GWC members from an onboarding process. So we're spending a lot of time, and I think we heard Jay or Anthony talk about implicit bias, and we all have it. So, part of making real change is getting folks to admit and be vulnerable that these challenges and these biases exist, and that it's okay to say you have them. It's not okay to not do anything about it, but it's perfectly okay to recognize that you have them. So the training for onboarding members is going to be critical, and it really starts right off the bat by setting a tone of importance and action. And then obviously, the Office of Workforce Strategy is going to continue to tap all of the advisors as a resource. We all play an important role to ensure that all existing processes, anything new that we're engaging in, is really anchored to our strategies, just as you've seen it through Career Connect and the review team that's engaged to ensure that the right bodies of work are moving forward. So an incredible amount of work. There'll also be the oversight board for the Good Jobs Challenge, and all the strengthening work that has to happen in intersectoral partnerships as well. So we couldn't be more pleased with all of the effort, but we share a lot that's in the chat, which for everything we do, there's 10 more things to do. And this is why we have to come together as a community to proceed forward. So on behalf of Jay and I and the full group, we really appreciate your time. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Anthony, to see if there's anything else you want to do before we close.
Thank you, Sue. So I think one of the things we probably could do is just to see if anyone has any additional questions, as you have the full attention of our office, as well as Sue and Jay, who have plenty of experience in these spaces. So would anyone have any questions or anything else they would like to present to our team? Did we answer everything all in the chat? Laura, did you get a chance to get to everything?
I don't think so. There was an amazing amount of information in the chat. I think it's going to take us a little bit of time to kind of peel through it all and get all the information. A lot of great stuff in there. But if there's any specific questions, feel free to raise your hand, because I know otherwise we'll have to kind of scroll back up and down again. But put your hand up and we can come on off mute, and I think we still have time, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of hands. There's a couple of hands up, but I just wanted to reiterate Laura's comment in the chat while you guys are figuring out whose hand gets picked in the time we have. But, Laura, you had some really inspiring words there. I just would want to make sure everyone had a chance to hear, which is we continue to learn and grow. We cannot wait to peel through the chat and implement the feedback. I love that language. And we always take pieces away whenever we meet. Heard it before, maybe even from someone here, but alone you go fast, but together you go far. So if you want to see that, I want to make sure everyone saw it. But back to you guys, because I know we've got some hands up.
All right, thank you. And we got about 10 minutes or so. So we'll start with from my screen that says Lupu. Sorry if I damaged you.
That's okay. You can call me Lou. My question in regards to the vocational village. Is I know you guys working with DOC with that. My question is, are you guys going to be reaching out to other agencies that do provide, the same services after release for these individuals to see how they can contribute to bring with this program? Because with DOC, they may have the resources, probably with transportation things, but how these other agency can benefit from vocational village once these individuals come to us and engage in job training and job placement and things like that. Can those agencies be part of the creation of vocational village, or is just solely just DOC?
Yes, I can take a shot, and then I actually think there are some DOC colleagues on the line. So if they want to also weigh in, feel free. But I think my initial take is absolutely. I think we definitely want to make sure this is a comprehensive program. And I know that DOC has in the past worked with American Job Centers. They've worked with regional workforce development boards. They've worked with community colleges, nonprofit organizations. I will say the proposal is in its infancy, but that's an opportune time to craft it and mold it into a way that really makes sure that the appropriate partners are there. And I think the feedback that you all have provided is going to be instrumental for at least myself to take back to the larger team. But what I can say is we will definitely make sure that this is a broader partnership that is inclusive of additional partners that have already been doing the work. That we are not this vocational village program. I don't want to speak for DOC here, but it's not meant to duplicate services. We want to leverage existing partners where we can, and that's 100% our intent. So just know that we will be, right now we're in still the storming phases of the approach. So we have to churn out a couple of additional details and iron out a few kinks. But once we get through that portion of the project, we are ready to definitely ramp up and start reaching out to, I think, broader stakeholders and get them involved on the ground in the rollout of the program.
All right, thank you now. Next is Paulette.
Just got a quick comment. And like I see so many faces, I've been doing this work for about 37 years with the Department of Labor. I remember when we transitioned CETA into Job Training Partnership Act, and I'm totally blown away and impressed and very hopeful that we're on the right path to making a difference in Connecticut. My only comment would be, I would love to see everybody trained in diversity and equity and inclusion. I went through a year-long training of courageous conversations, and I agree with you, Sue. We all got our issues, but I think we got to recognize those issues if we're going to be successful in the state of Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll double down on that. Next, Amy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I had a question specifically about the regional sector partnerships and the capital area tech and the capital area healthcare partnerships, and that little kind of Venn diagram over there at the side that talked about community partners. I'm partnering with the mayor here in East Hartford. That's where we're based. And I know there are some of my working cities colleagues here on the call representing other parts of the state. But I haven't heard a lot about how those partnerships are playing out at the community level. And we work directly with job seekers trying to get them into training and actually have our own funding to spend on training. So would love to know, I know one of the healthcare partnership, it looked like it was still in development stage, but the IT partnership is already in existence, and it's not clear to me, and it may not be clear to others sort of at the ground level who are working with job seekers. How do we actually connect them to the, to those partnerships? So that's a question. And then one quick comment also on criminally, formerly justice involved people. I have 10 years as a public defender in Massachusetts and worked with folks in clearing their records and pardon hearings and things like that. I think it's really important to work with employers around certificates of employability. And as other folks on the call have mentioned, working with employers to know, like a DUI 10 years ago should not preclude someone from getting a job, never mind a litany of other charges that perhaps are, ready for pardon or apply to a certificate of employability. But I think it's really difficult sometimes for employers to speak that language and understand that language. So maybe like a 101 in that universe might be really good for our private sector partners. But you can address my question, which was the latter part of my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, Amy, great comment and great question. I will one up the comment significantly. But in terms of your question, I think the capital area tech partnership is still also in its earlier stages. I think they've formed their sort of working groups, and they've, I think, started charting their individual project plans to kind of map out timelines and progress across those working groups. But now they're sort of in the stage where they're looping in other organizations to kind of help move the work forward. Again, the process behind these partnerships is to get business to come to the table and set the agenda. And I think we've done that within that tech partnership, but now it's time to get additional partners involved. So Amy, maybe you shoot me a note separate to this, and I can make sure that you and the rest of the sort of working cities colleagues are getting plugged in there, and across the other partnerships in the state as well. You know, I know the work you all are doing is not specific to IT by any means. So I will definitely make sure that you're getting looped into those. And on the healthcare, you're right. It's that one is much earlier on, but you know, same sort of process will unfold. But we will make sure that, you know, once the initiatives are defined, that the right organizations are plugged in. So definitely shoot me a note, and I can get you plugged in right away on the partnerships that are already sort of, you know, up and running.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, and we have one last question from Mark.
Yeah, as to the latter comments that Amy just made on the reentry subcommittee, we have discussed putting together a guidebook for employers to educate them about the recruiting, onboarding, screening steps, and retention efforts, including discussions about educating on the certificates of employability, to kind of revive that and use that as one of the elements that a returning citizen can bring with them to substantiate their integrity and credibility and employability. So I think there have been some healthy discussions on those fronts, and hopefully see something come out of that.
Thank you, Mark. And that precludes our meeting. I want to thank everyone for, you know, showing up, sharing your insights, and I personally look forward to getting to know everyone on this call and working more closely across, you know, across industries. Anybody else would like to say anything else from our team before we close out? But on my end, just thank you. Okay.
Thanks all.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.